The Young and the Restless spoilers. Kyle Abbott had always believed he could stay one step ahead of disaster, but in his relationship with Claire Newman, his own missteps were finally catching up to him. From the moment their romance began, it had been fragile, shadowed by insecurities and secrets, and now the most dangerous of those secrets had clawed its way to the surface. Kyle had assured Claire there was nothing between him and Audra Charles, that the chapter of flirtation and rivalry with the cunning businesswoman was long behind him. He had sworn to her that his focus, his loyalty, and his heart were hers alone. But Claire, sharp-eyed and unwilling to live on promises, discovered that the truth was far more complicated. It wasn't that Kyle had gone further with Audra, it was that he had gone just far enough. There had been a kiss, one Claire had never been told about, one that suggested something deeper, a spark that neither Kyle nor Audra had chosen to extinguish honestly. The revelation hit Claire like a lightning bolt, not because she believed Kyle had betrayed her body, but because he had betrayed her trust. The omission, the half-truths, the quiet evasions of it painted a picture of a man who wanted to control the story instead of confessing it. Kyle's instinct, when confronted with the unraveling of his lies, was not humility but desperation. He told himself that if he could anchor Claire more firmly to him, if he could lock their future into place, the doubts would fade and the wounds would heal. He convinced himself that a proposal would be the bomb, the grand gesture that would eclipse the shadows of Audra Charles once and for all. With the urgency of a man trying to save not only love but face, he bought her a ring beautiful, expensive, dazzling, the kind of promise that spoke louder than words. And then, in a moment he believed would change everything, he dropped to one knee and asked Claire to marry him. But Claire, wounded and suspicious, was not swept away by diamonds or declarations. She heard his words and the sincerity in his eyes, but she also saw the fear behind them, the attempt to paper over cracks with grand gestures. She did not reject him outright, but she also did not accept. Instead, she asked for time, begged for space, pleaded for the freedom to breathe and think without Kyle smothering her with his insecurities. She told him she needed to decide for herself whether his love was enough to outweigh his lies, whether she could move past the betrayal of omission. Her request was reasonable, but to Kyle it felt like rejection. He had gambled everything on the hope that his proposal would silence her doubts, and instead, it had given her an excuse to pull further away. Claire left the Abbott home that night with a storm in her chest and a hollowness in her heart. She wandered into society, needing something to dull the ache, and ordered drink after drink until the edge of her anger blurred into reckless abandon. It was there, in her haze of frustration and alcohol, that Holden Novak appeared. Holden had always lingered at the edges of her story, offering charm, patience, and a quiet attentiveness that Kyle never seemed capable of sustaining. That night, his timing was impeccable. He joined her at the bar, ordered drinks, and let her pour out her frustrations without judgment. Their laughter came easier with each glass, their walls dissolving into the intoxicating fog of vulnerability. Then, as if fate wanted to escalate the drama, Audra Charles appeared. Her arrival sparked the inevitable of women with combustible history and unspoken grudges facing each other over the same man. Words sharpened, voices rose, and within moments, society teetered on the edge of a full-blown brawl. Audra, smug and needling, reminded Claire of the kiss she had shared with Kyle, pushing buttons with surgical precision. Claire, tipsy and furious, was ready to lunge, to spill months of suppressed fury into a public showdown. But Holden, quick-thinking and protective, intervened before fists could fly. He ushered Claire out, shielding her from humiliation, guiding her to the quiet refuge of crimson lights to sober up. The coffee helped, but not enough to restore the walls Claire usually held so tightly around herself. When Holden suggested a walk to clear her head, she agreed, and the two of them ended up at Chancellor Park beneath the soft glow of the city lights. The air was cool, the world around them quiet, and for the first time that night, Claire allowed herself to breathe. She confessed her anger, her fear, her exhaustion with Kyle's lies and attempts at control. Holden listened without judgment, his presence steady and grounding. And then, in a moment of weakness, or perhaps inevitability, she leaned toward him. Their lips met in a kiss of at first, then heavier, the kind of kiss that spoke of loneliness, of betrayal, of two people finding comfort in the wrong place at the wrong time. For Claire, the kiss was a moment of escape, a brief reprieve from the weight of Kyle's betrayal and her own confusion. For Holden, it was something more, a declaration, a promise that he could be the man she needed when Kyle could not. And yet, even as their lips parted, the truth hung between them like a guillotine. This kiss would not remain a secret. Nothing in Genoa City ever did. Kyle, still reeling from Claire's refusal to accept his proposal outright, would soon learn of her night at society, her near fight with Audra, and, most devastatingly, her kiss with Holden. When he did, the heartbreak would be immeasurable, not only because she had strayed, but because it confirmed his deepest fear, that in trying to control her, he had pushed her into someone else's arms. For Claire, the fallout would force a reckoning. She could no longer claim to be the victim of Kyle's lies while hiding her own transgressions. And for Holden, what began as comfort would become ammunition, positioning him as both a rival and a temptation Kyle could no longer ignore. In the end, the story was no longer just about a kiss between Kyle and Audra or Claire and Holden. It was about the fragility of trust, the futility of control, and the inevitability of secrets rising to the surface. Kyle's desperate proposal, Claire's reckless night, and Holden's perfectly timed presence had set the stage for a triangle that would scorch every bond in its path. And as for Audra, her smirk as she watched the pieces fall into place was proof enough that she had no intention of letting the chaos subside. Genoa City was about to witness another storm, and this time, the battle lines would not be drawn in boardrooms or courtrooms, but in hearts already bruised, betrayed, and burning with desire. Kyle Abbott had always considered himself a man who could control his destiny, who could manage the storms that came his way with calm authority. He had built his life around trust, first in his family, then in the woman he loved, Clare Newman. When he first entered into their relationship, it had felt like fate, two people who had both suffered in the shadows, now finding solace in each other. But as his love for Claire grew deeper, so did the weight of his insecurities. The fears that Claire might not love him as fully as he loved her, that she might harbor secrets, began to gnaw at him. Still, he believed in her. He believed in the goodness that radiated from her, and that belief kept him anchored, kept him fighting to protect what they had. He saw her as a woman who couldn't do wrong, a woman who was above the mistakes of the past. But that night, when Claire kissed Holden Novak in the quiet solitude of Chancellor Park, everything Kyle believed shattered in an instant. He had been following her from a distance, unable to ignore the doubts that had started to simmer in the pit of his stomach. He told himself it was nothing, just a need to clear his head, to figure out what he was doing wrong, to fix the cracks in their relationship. But when he saw them standing so close, when he saw her lean in and kiss him with such intensity, his world collapsed. It wasn't just the kiss. It was the realization that Claire, the woman he had trusted, had taken a step into another man's arms, not out of obligation, but out of desire. The sight of them locked in a passionate kiss was too much for Kyle to bear. His heart lurched with betrayal, each second of the kiss feeling like a wound that grew deeper and deeper. He had been the one to offer Claire everything, his loyalty, his heart, his future, and yet here she was, giving something to Holden that he had wanted for himself. The kiss wasn't just a betrayal of their relationship, it was a direct blow to everything Kyle had believed about her, about them, and about love. The tears burned in his eyes as he stood frozen, watching, unable to move, unable to speak. His whole life had been defined by control, and now, for the first time, he felt completely powerless. As Claire pulled away from Holden, her face flushed with the remnants of the kiss, Kyle's world spun. She didn't even notice him standing there, hidden in the shadows, unable to face her after what he had just witnessed. The woman he thought he knew, the woman he believed could do no wrong, had shattered him with a single kiss. In that moment, Kyle felt like nothing. He wasn't her partner. He wasn't the man she had chosen. He was just a fool, watching as someone else took his place. The devastation was too much to bear. He didn't know what to do, what to feel, or where to go. But in his mind, one person stood out, one person who had always been there, the one person who had never disappointed him, never left him feeling like this. Audra Charles. Audra had always been an enigma, a woman who seemed to operate outside the boundaries of right and wrong. She was ambitious, confident, and unapologetic. More than that, she had always been there, a constant presence when he was frustrated with his life, when Claire's insecurities surfaced, when things seemed to spiral. And now, in his broken state, Audra seemed like the only refuge, the only person who could offer him something, even if it was just a temporary escape from the pain. Kyle found himself standing outside her apartment building, his mind clouded by the raw emotions that still gripped him. He wasn't sure what he was hoping for, but in his desperation, he reached for his phone and texted her, "I need you." It was a plea more than an invitation. A moment later, her reply came, "Come over." And just like that, Kyle found himself stepping into her apartment, the last place he should be, but the only place where he thought he might find solace. Audra greeted him with a smirk, her eyes scanning him with a mixture of curiosity and amusement. She could see the devastation written all over his face, the shattered pride, the longing for something he didn't yet understand. Without a word, she poured him a drink, a glass of whiskey that burned as it slid down his throat. They sat in silence, the weight of his emotions hanging heavy in the air, until finally he spoke. "I saw her," Kyle muttered, his voice thick with emotion. "Clear." She kissed him. Holden, the words were like acid on his tongue, and he had to force himself to say them. She kissed him, and I can't handle it. Audra, ever the provocateur, leaned back in her chair and studied him carefully. "And what did you expect, Kyle? That she'd wait around forever while you're off pretending you're Mr. Perfect. That she'd fall in line with whatever you wanted." She poured herself a drink, the ice clinking against the glass. "You've been holding on to her, controlling her, and now look where you are. She's just as human as you are, Kyle. You can't expect someone to stay perfect for you while you're busy screwing everything up." Her words stung, but they were also a balm. She wasn't wrong. Kyle had been so focused on controlling Claire, on securing his place in her life, that he had failed to see the cracks forming. Audra's words were the truth he didn't want to hear, but somehow they made him feel understood. The weight of the betrayal, the hurt, the sense of failure made it feel bearable, even as it crushed him inside. As the night wore on, Kyle and Audra spoke more, the conversation shifting between anger and sadness, between understanding and regret. And before he knew it, he was there, in her arms, in her bed, seeking comfort from a woman who never demanded anything from him except honesty, and even then, only when it suited her. They shared a kiss, not the passionate kiss of lovers, but the desperate kiss of two people who had been broken by love and were now searching for a way to patch the pieces together. The next morning, Kyle awoke with a heavy heart, his mind clouded by the consequences of his actions. He had sought solace in the arms of Audra, but what did it mean? Was this a rebound, or had he truly crossed a line that could not be undone? Would this betrayal hurt him just as much as the kiss with Holden had shattered him? He didn't know the answers, but what he did know was that the battle between Claire and Audra had only just begun. The fight for Kyle's heart, his loyalty, and his love would be a war unlike any other, and no one would walk away unscathed. In the end, Kyle found himself caught in the crossfire between two women who had both claimed his heart in different ways. But the damage was already done, and as he looked at Audra beside him, he realized that the cost of love and revenge might just be too high for him to ever recover from.